Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chaf Hey of Masechta Yoma, Daf 25. Daf 25 talks about a whole bunch of stuff. I think mostly pretty interesting. Let's see. The clothing during the lottery. That's interesting, right? Meaning, what was the clothing that the Kohen was wearing during the lottery? Because it was, how do you show up to the lottery? Maybe you'll win, maybe you won't. Do you have to come prepared? Let's see. Machlokas between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Discussion shtickle, not too much detail, but a little bit about the lishkas hagazis, which is interesting. Discussion of how many lotteries exactly they would do in the Beis Hamikdash every day. Let's see, what did I write here? Who does the Kabbalah Saddam? Okay. And different opinions on the ordering of the limbs onto the Mizbeach. And we're going to get to a new Mishnah somewhere in there. So, a whole bunch of stuff today. Let us get started with the first one. We are on Daf Chav Daled Amud Beis, about 5-6 lines before it gets wide. Here we go. It's by the little Aleph of the Gos Habach, and interestingly, the Gos Habach actually adds, Arba Payasus HaYusham V'chule. So we had said in our Mishnah, where was this Mishnah? Was it at the beginning of the Perek? Yes. Interesting. So on Daf Chav Beis Amud Aleph, at the beginning of the Perek, so the Mishnah said, that there were 4 lotteries that happen every day in the Beis Hamikdash, and the first Mishnah described the first lottery, and the second Mishnah that we're going to get to today discusses the second lottery. So it says, how come we have these lotteries? So the Gemara says, what do you mean Lama Mefisin? We explained why we have the lotteries, because it was dangerous without the lotteries. At least regarding the Truma Sadeshan. No, what the Gemara wants to know is, why do we have 4 lotteries? Why not, at the beginning of the day, have one big lottery, divvy out everything, and be done with it? How come you need to do it 4 times, schlep back, make a whole to-do? So the Gemara answers, Bidiyuk. Bidiyuk. We want to make a whole to-do. Rabbi Yochanan says, so that you should feel that there's something going on. Not just at the beginning of the day, you do one big lottery and your yotzes on. Shinemar, as the pasuk says, Asher yachtav namtik, so that together we will figure out the secrets. Beveis Elokim nahalach biragesh, and in the house of God we will walk with the feeling. And therefore we want it to feel like there's something going on. We want it, right, that 4 times throughout the day, all the Kohanim, they get together, they make a lottery, there's something going on. Not just that, in the pre-dawn hours, they have a lottery, they divvy everything up, and then everyone goes to sleep for the rest of the day. That there should be stuff going on, there should be things happening, there should be a feeling in the Beis Hamikdash. But Mefisin. So now, what are they wearing when they do the lottery? Are they wearing the big day kahuna? Are they wearing the big day chol? What are they wearing? Rav Nachman on the big day chol, Rav Sheshes on the big day kodesh. Nice clean machlokas. Rav Nachman says weekday clothing, regular clothing, and Rav Sheshes says holy clothing, the big day kahuna. Rav Nachman on the big day chol. So how come Rav Nachman says that they wear just regular clothing? That they show up to the lottery wearing just regular clothing. The Omer B'Vigdei Kodesh, the theory being that if they would show up already wearing their Big Day Kahuna, if everyone's already coming, showing up ready to work, well then the bullies over there, they're just going to force their way into doing the avoda. I got dressed, I showed up, I'm doing the avoda, I'm getting in there by one way or another. And I guess the psychological assumption over here is that it's not like they had to get dressed or anything in order to do this, then it's lower stakes, and it's like, alright, if these bullies don't win, they'll just go do something else. But if they already showed up in the big day kahuna, then they might bully people into doing the avoda, even if they didn't get picked. Rav Sheshes, Amr says Rav Sheshes, big day kodesh, that the taka do show up in the big day kahuna, because the iyamah big day chol, because if you say that they show up in just regular clothing. Agav chavivuse mikru v'avdei. Well, because it's gonna be so beloved to them to do the avoda. Someone's gonna win the lottery, and they're gonna be so excited to do the avoda that they're gonna end up they're not gonna change first. They're just gonna do it in their regular clothing, and we don't want that, so therefore we say just come prepared, and I guess he's not so nervous about the bullies. Rav Nachman says, I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you that the avoda is done that the lottery is done with the big day chol. The Tanan, as we learn in the Mishnah, Masarun lechazonin v'ayu mafshitin osan as big dayin v'lo hayu manichin alein elen michnasayim bilvad. So Rav Nachman says we have a Mishnah in Talmud that says that after the lottery, they would give the Kohanim who won the lottery would go to these chazanim, these shamoshin, these workers, representatives, these people would work with these Kohanim who just won the lottery. But mafshit and also is big day, and they would strip down all of their clothing. They'll only be wearing the gatkis. They'll only be wearing their michnasayim. So Rav Nachman wants to say that what's that Mishnah talking about? It's talking about the winners. That the people who won, and Rav Nachman wants to argue, and they're still wearing their regular clothing, we then strip them down so that they can get dressed in their big day kahuna. So you see, they're showing up in their regular clothing. Amar Rav Huna bar Yehuda, Amar Rav Sheshes, lo. Bo'osen shelo zachu lefayis. No. Rav Huna bar Yehuda says in the name of Rav Sheshes that you can argue, Davka, that it's the people who didn't win the lottery. Meaning, Rav Sheshes' opinion is that they show up to the lottery wearing their big kahuna. And if they didn't win, then they have to take it off. Because they're not going to do the avodah. This taka makes sense. Because if it enters your mind to say that who's stripping down to the gatkis, it's the Kohanim who won the lottery. And if it's like you, Rav Nachman, that they won the lottery, they were wearing their regular clothing, so therefore they have to strip down so that they can get dressed in their big day kahuna. That wouldn't make any sense. The Mishnah says that they would strip down and leave their michnasayim on. But ve'atanya, we learn in a brisa, how do we know that when it comes to the big day kahuna, the first thing that you put on is the michnasayim? Therefore the pasuk says, that the michnasayim have to be on your flesh, meaning they have to be directly on your flesh. They have to be the first thing that you put on. And therefore, Rav Sheshes argues that according to Rav Nachman's view, what would happen is this, that the Kohanim would all do the lottery in their regular clothing. Whoever won would then strip down. They would still be wearing their michnasayim. And Rav Sheshes wants to understand this to mean that then on top of their michnasayim, they would put on the big day kahuna, which means that the michnasayim are not al bisaro, are not directly on your flesh. And we need the michnasayim to be directly on their flesh. So therefore argues Rav Sheshes, it must be saying that it's the Kohanim who did not win, that everyone shows up in their big day kahuna that they put on properly, and the Kohanim who did not win the lottery then take off the big day kahuna. Ve'idach, Rav Nachman defends his position and says, no, halo kasha, that's no problem. Hochi katani, this is how to understand it. That everybody would come to do the lottery wearing regular clothing, and then whoever won the lottery would strip. So what would they do? So ad she'odan alein big day chol. So while they were still wearing their regular clothing, mabishin also michnasei kodesh. The first thing that they would do is they would put on the michnasayim of the big day kahuna. Vayim afshitin also in big day chol, and then we have another visitor. Oh, it's the same visitor. Oh, wow. Of course I'm still, yeah.
How long will this take?
How long?
In an hour, basically.
It takes, yeah. Can you imagine? Imagine all the people who have to listen to this. Serious nefesh, right?
When are you going to be done?
When am I going to be done? Well, you see where my finger is? So this finger needs to go all the way down the page, and then turn the page, and go all the way down the next one.
And then turn the page.
Yeah. No, I don't have to turn the page anymore.
Good. How long will that take you?
I don't know, 40 minutes?
Oh my gosh.
Alright, Breeze, the people are waiting. Breeze!
What?
The door. Thanks. Let's go weiter. So, so according to Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman says that the Kohanim come to do the lottery in their regular clothing, and then whoever wins the lottery, they first put on the michnasayim of the Big Day Kahuna, and so they're putting on the michnasayim first, and then they take off the rest of their clothing. That's what they're saying. That then they take off all the rest of their regular clothing, leave their michnasayim of the Big Day Kahuna, they leave that on because they already put those on first, and then after that they would continue getting dressed in the Big Day Kodesh. So, Rav Nachman wants to understand the Mishnah to say that they're showing up to the lottery in regular clothing. Rav Sheshes wants to understand it to say that they're showing up in Big Day Kahuna already. Amr Rav Sheshes, says Rav Sheshes, Mina Minala. Comes Rav Sheshes to prove that, to make his argument, which is that the lottery was done in Big Day Kahuna, in Big Day Kodesh. The Tanyas, we learn the Brisa lishkas hagazis, kimin basilka gedola haisa. That the lishkas hagazis is where the Sanhedrin met. So that was like this big kind of building. It was in the wall of the Azara, in the northern wall of the Azara. And it was this kind of big, structure. Payas b'mizracha, and they would do this lottery. Where was this lottery every day? It was in the eastern part of the Lishkas Hagazis. V'zaken Yoshev b'ma'arava, and you have a elder from the Sanhedrin who would kind of like make sure everything was going well. He would sit in the western part of the Lishkas Hagazis. So you'd have the lottery in the east, the lottery of the Kohanim in the east, and the Zaken sitting in the west. V'Kohanim mukafin, v'omdim kimin b'chol, and the Kohanim would stand in a circle like this brooch. You guys know what a brooch is? I don't know. It was kind of some thing that the women would use to keep their shirt closed, but it was round, just like the circle that the Kohanim would stand in. V'amamuna ba, and comes the appointee, the person in charge who leads the lot, and he takes the hat off of one of the Kohanim, and then they know that the lot is starting with the fellow without the hat. Okay. So, Zell, right? 21st finger is it, kind of thing. Now, and Rav Shesh's proof is that, well, from the fact that it says that the Mamuna removes the mitznefes from one of them, why is he wearing the mitznefes? Isn't the mitznefes Big Day Kahuna? So clearly they're showing up wearing the Big Day Kahuna. So the Gemara says, Taka in. Yes, they could be wearing a mitznefes even if it's not the Big Day Kahuna. Kidetani Rav Yehuda, as Rav Yehuda taught, Bitim Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, Kohen she'asasa lo imo ksones, that if you have a Kohen whose mother made for him a ksones, a tunic, Oved ba'avodas yachid, he can do individual avodas. He can't do public avoda wearing it, but he could do like private services wearing it. I think maybe for himself. Is that what it was? I think maybe just like for himself. Maybe he could do certain avodas doing it, but not public avodas, not communal avodas. He can't use this. So we see that there are concepts of, you can have, let's say, a Kohen whose mother makes him a mitznefes, and it's not necessarily right. There is a concept of these items that weren't necessarily Big Day Kahuna, that they were considered Big Day Chol, but they might, so basically you could have taken the mitznefes off of somebody's head that wasn't technically Big Day Kahuna. Okay. Fine. So what do we see? So we see that Rav Sheshes tried to bring a proof that they would do the lotteries of Big Day Kahuna, but he didn't really succeed. Amr Abayish mamina lishkas hagazis chetze bakodesh v'chetze b'chol u'shmamina shnei psachim hayu lo echad pasuach bakodesh v'echad pasuach b'chol. This is very, very interesting. Let's read that again. Amar Abaye, says Abaye, Shmamina, we learn from this brisa, lishkas hagazis chetze b'kodesh v'chetze b'chol. We learn that half of the lishkas hagazis was in the holy part of the Azara, and half of the lishkas hagazis was in the non-holy part of the Azara. Ushmamina shnei psachim ayula, and we also learned that the lishkas hagazis had two doors. Echad pasuach b'kodesh ve'echad pasuach b'chol. One opened to the holy part of the Azara, and one opened to the just regular non-holy part of the Azara. Here is how come. Because if it enters your mind to say that the lishkas hagazis was entirely in the holy part of the Azara, then how could the brisa say that you have an elder sitting in the west? We said in Yeshiva Bazar El Malchi Beis David Bavad, only the Davidic kings were allowed to sit in the Azara. Nobody else was allowed to sit in the Azara. And therefore, how could you have the zaken sitting in the Azara if it was holy? And therefore, it must be that at least where the zaken was sitting was not kodesh. Okay, so then maybe the entire lishkas hagazis was taka chol. But if we say that the entire lishkas hagazis was not holy, was chol, and that's why the elder was sitting there, but we're saying that the lottery was happening in the east. We had said, or at the beginning of the shir today, the beginning of the daf, we had said that the reason why they do the lotteries 4 times a day is because we want a feeling to be in the Beis Elokim, inside the Azara. And therefore we want the lottery taka to be happening in the Azara, in the holy part. So on the one hand, we have on the eastern part, we have this lottery going on, and that needs to be in the holy part. And then we have this zaken who is sitting down, which means that he's clearly not in the holy part. So it must mean that part of the Azara, a part of the lishkas hagazis is in the kodesh, and part of the lishkas hagazis is in the chol. Okay, say it. So we learned that half of the lishkas hagazis is in the holy part of the Azara, and half of it is not in the Azara. And if you're going to say that the lishkas hagazis only has one door, now this takes us back to a sugya that we learned in Masechta Psachim. So it's chazara for us. Ufasuach lakodesh. So if we want to say that there's only one door and it's opened up into the Azara, it's opened up into the holy part, well then zaken yoshiv b'marava. How could it be then that this zaken is sitting? V'atnan, we learn in the Mishnah, l'shachos abnuyos b'chol, that if you have offices that are built in the non-holy part, ufsuchos lakodesh, but their entryway, they're opened up into a holy part. So even though the building itself is like outside, is external to the Azara, but if the way to get in and out is open to the Azara, so then Tochan Kodesh, the inside of this structure is going to be considered holy, just like the opening the door that it's open into. And therefore, so if we're saying that there was only one door and that door was open to a holy area, well then that would make the entire lishkas hagazis holy, and then we get back to our question of how could the kohen, how could the zaken be sitting? And if we say that there's only one door and it's open to a non-holy area, well then that would make the entire lishkas hagazis non-holy. So then Pais b'mizracha, then how can you have the lottery happening in the east? We learn in the Mishnah that if you have an office that is built into the holy part of the Azara, into the Azara, into the holy part, but its entryway is into a non-holy part, Tochan Chol, then we'll treat it as non-holy, in which case how could the lottery be happening in there? We need Beis Elokim Nahalich B'Rogesh. Elav Shmamina, rather, we must learn from it, Shnei Psachim Ayu La, that there were 2 entranceways into the lishkas hagazis, echad pasuach b'kodesh ve'echad pasuach l'chol, one open into the holy part, one open into the non-holy part, and that is how we can settle all of these things, that you had the lottery happening in the holy part, you have the elder sitting in the non-holy part. Very, very interesting stuff about the lishkas hagazis. Okay, now we get to a new Mishnah, Payas Hasheni. Now we're up to the second of the daily lotteries, mishochet umizorek, who is going to do the slaughtering of the korban tamid, who is going to throw its blood on the mizbeach, mimedashim mizbeach hapnimi, who is going to remove the ashes from the inner altar where they offer the ketoris, mimedashim is menorah, who's going to clean out the ashes from the menorah, umimayla ivarim lakevesh, who is going to put the limbs onto the ramp of the mizbeach. Here are the limbs: harosh, the head; v'haregel, the back right leg; v'shtei yadayim, the two forearm, the two animals like sheep and stuff. They have four legs. So we mentioned the back right one. Now we're talking about the two front ones. Ha'ukitz, the tail; v'haregel, the back left leg; v'hachaze, the breast; v'hagera, the neck; v'shtei adfanis, and the two flanks. What's a flank? A flank. What do you want me to tell you? It's what the heck is a flank? Well, it includes the shoulder. Oh, it's probably like that whole top area, because I think the chaza is like the whole bottom area, like the whole stomachy kind of bottom area, and then I think like the whole top shoulder area would be considered the flanks. V'akravayim, and the intestines; v'asolis, and also flour; v'achvitin, and the minchas, the flour for the minchas chavitin that the Kohen Gadol would offer every single day. Vayayin shlosha asar, vayayin, and the wine. Shlosha asar kohanim zachubo, and there were 13 kohanim that merited these, who were able to sort of win in the lottery. Amr ben Azai says, Ben Azai lifnei Rabbi Akiva. In the name of Rabbi Akiva, we learned, of course, in Masechta Shkalim that Ben Azai was a Talmud Chaver of Rabbi Akiva. And that was where we referred to Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel as the Avos HaOlam, the fathers of the world, which was very, very interesting. Mishum Rabbi Yeshua, he says in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, Derech Hilucho HaYakarev, that actually the animal was offered in the order in which it walks, and the Gemara will explain what that means. Frek the Gemara Ibailu, the Gemara asks a very interesting kasha, Kishein Mefaisin, Lavoda Achas Mefaisin, O Dilma L'chol Avoda V'Avoda He Mefaisin. Very, very interesting. So, of course, we had said that there are 4 lotteries that happen every single day in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, we also pointed out that the second lottery, the first lottery was Trumas Hadeshin, pretty straightforward. The second lottery, there were 13 winners. So does that mean that there were 13 lotteries in the second lottery? Or was there one lottery, somebody would win, and then the 12 people next, he and the 12 people to his right would come along for the ride? Or was the second lottery made up of really 13 sub-lotteries? So Gemara's kasha. Again, Ibailu, that's a kasha. Kishe mefaisin, lavoda achas mefaisin. So when we have the second lottery, is it one lottery for all of the 13? You get one winner and then the 12 people next to him come along? Or maybe for each and every individual, maybe the second lottery, mamish, consisted of like 13 sub-lotteries. Tashma, come in here, I have a payosus, ayusham. So we say, well, how many lotteries were there in the Beis HaMikdash every day? 4. And if it enters your mind to say that for each of these 13, they would have a separate lottery, then it would be way more than 4. The second lottery itself would be 13. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, yeah, but Hachi Kamar, you could say that this is what it means. Arba paimim nichnasin la'afis, l'chochada v'chada, hayu batu v'payosus. Nachman bar Yitzchak says, come on, that's not such a good kasha. What you could say is that 4 times they would congregate for a lottery. But each lottery could have consisted of a number of lotteries. So therefore what it's saying, right, meaning we want 4 times a day, everybody congregates there, and once they're there, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says you can have a whole bunch of lotteries. Tashma, coming here, Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, L'hoya payis lemachta, that when it comes to the Ketores, so you would have one fellow offering the Ketores. Now the Ketores was incense. Now you would need another fellow to come with him, another Kohen to come with him, with a shovel full of hot coals that the Ketores can be put on. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer, L'hoya payis lemachta, there was not a separate lottery for the shovel Kohen. Rather, the Kohen who won the lottery for the Ketores says to the person next to him, hey, why don't you be my assistant to take the coals on the shovel? And therefore, the Gemara wants to assume right now, we're going to see in the second the opposite possibility as well, but what the Gemara wants to assume right now is that you see that when the lottery falls on one person, the person next to him comes along. So the second lottery, therefore, was just one person would win, and then the 12 people next to him would come along. Shiny machta uktoris. The Gemara says no. Don't bring a proof from the machta and the ktoris. Dechada avodahi, because it's all just really one avoda, and therefore there wouldn't be separate lotteries. But when it comes to these 13, different avodas over here, there would be separate lotteries. Okay, fine. Ikadamri, there are those who say davka machta uktoris dechada avodahi. Now we can have the opposite assumption, which is that no. What we want to say, is that we have a brisa that says that by the ketores and by the bringing the coals and the shovel, so there it was only one lottery for both. Aval shar avodas, but when it comes to I think I skipped the one, the chad avodi, because it's all one avoda. Aval shar avodas, but the other avodas, by payis, that you'll need, but by the other avodas, you need a separate lottery for each and every one. And how can we davka to say that the machta doesn't get a separate lottery? Because I may have thought to say, well, I may have had a habit to say, well, since the ketores is not common, right? There's no other, you only bring the ketores once a day, that's it. Nobody else is bringing voluntary ketores offerings. So therefore, since it's not common, ume'asra, and apparently we're going to learn tomorrow that take, if you brought the ketores, you would become very wealthy. So naskin lapayis b'fnei, let's make a separate lottery for it, even though it's one avoda. Kamash malan, that we don't have to make a separate lottery for it. Okay, fine. Toshma. So we still haven't really answered the question. So is the lottery in the Beis Hamikdash, let's say the second lottery, did it consist of a whole bunch of sub lotteries, or was it just one lottery and then everybody next to the winner would come along? Toshma de Tani Reb Chia. The Reb Chia taught, lo l'chol avoda v'avoda mefaisin. You would not do an avoda for every single. You would not do a lottery for every single avoda. Eloquent shezacha b'tamid. Shneim aser echa v'kohanim nitshachan imo shmamina. Rather, the Kohen who won the lottery for the Korban Tamid, the 12 Kohanim next to him would come along. They would not do, a whole bunch of sub lotteries. There you go. Very interesting. So basically, that's the way it would work with all of these different winners in the second lottery. That there would really be one winner, and then all the other winners were standing in the right place at the right time. They were standing next to the winner. Payis hasheni v'chulei ibaylu v'asakasha mi mekabel. Who does the Kabbalah Saddam? Right. If we look, what does it say in the Mishnah? Payis hasheni mishoichet u'mizayrik. Who does the shchita and who does the zrika? What about it doesn't say anything about the Kabbalah Saddam. So who does the Kabbalah Saddam? So mi mekabel. Is it shochet mekabel? Is it the slaughterer also does the Kabbalah Saddam? The Yoma Zorik Mekabel, because if you would say that the one who throws the blood of the Mizbeach is also the one who does the Kabbalah Saddam, Agav Chavivuse, because he's so excited to do the Avoda, Lo Mekabel Elchule Dam, he won't accept all of the blood. Rather, he'll get too excited, and before all of the blood is received, he'll already run to the Mizbeach, and he needs to receive all the blood. So therefore, maybe better that the slaughterer should receive the blood. Or Duma Zorik Mekabel, or maybe Davka, the one who throws the blood in the Mizbeach, should also be the one to do the Kabbalah Saddam, to receive the blood. The Amad Shochid Mekabel, because if you say that the slaughterer is the one who does the Kabbalah Saddam, Zimrin de Shachid Zar. Well, what happens if a non-Kohen is the one who does the Shchita? Because a non-Kohen is allowed to do Shchita. Tashma, Kamanir Ben Kohen. So Ben Kohen, who was a Kohen Gadol. Very interesting. What do you think? First temple, second temple? I don't know. Also, Yud Beis Dad L'Chior. He made 12 spouts for the kiyor. The kiyor is what they would use to wash their hands and their feet. The Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. K'dei sheyu yud beis echav ha'kohanim ha'asukim b'tamid mikachin yidayin v'Raglayin b'vasacha, so that the 12 Kohanim who were doing the avoda of the tamid would all be able to do the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim at the same time. Now, one thing that's important to note is that the Kohen who does the shchita, the Kohen who slaughters the Korban Tamid, does not need to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. Only from the receiving of the blood and on do you have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim. And we're saying that Ben Katan, the Kohen Gadol, made a 12-spout kiyor so that all of the 12 Kohanim who were involved with the parts of the Kohen Tamid, the steps that require Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, they would all be able to wash their hands at the same time. And if it enters your mind to say that the slaughterer, in addition to slaughtering, also does the Kabbalah Sadam, well then, he would also have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, because Kabbalah Sadam, you need Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, Tzleiser Have, and Ben Katan would have had to have made 13 spouts, but he only made 12. Elav Shmamina, so what do we see? Zorik Mekabel, that the one who does the Zrika Sadam also does the Kabbalah Sadam, and therefore the Shochet, the slaughterer, doesn't have to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim, and he doesn't do the Kabbalah Sadam. Shmamina. Omle Rav Acha b'Derav Rav Ashi Afonanami Tanina says Rav Acha b'Derav to Rav Ashi. We also have a Mishnah stating this: Shochat HaShochet v'Kibel Mekabel. If the slaughterer slaughtered and then the receiver received, Uvalo Lizrok, and then the receiver goes to throw it on the Mizbeach, Shmamina. So we see that it's the receiver who's throwing the blood on the Mizbeach. Very interesting. So the Mishnah had listed the order in which the parts of the animal are placed on the ramp of the Mizbeach. Ben Azai then said to Rabbi Akiva, in the name of Rabbi Yoshua, that the animal is put on the ramp in the order that it walks. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a brayso, Ketzad derech hilucho, how does an animal walk? Harosh, first comes the head, ve'aregel, and then I guess the back right leg, hechaze, the chest, ve'agera, in the neck, v'shtei yadayim, and the two front arms, v'shtei defanos, and the two flanks, ha'oketz, the tail, ve'aregel, and the back left foot. All right. Rabbi Yossi Yoma says, Rabbi Yossi derech havshato hayakar, that the animal was put on the mizbeach, on the ramp, but in the same order that you would flay that you would strip the hide from it. Ketzad derech havshato, how do you remove the hide from an animal? Harosh v'aregel, well, first the head, the head, and then the back right leg. Ha'oketz, the tail, v'aregel, and the back leg, and the back left leg. V'shtei defanos, the two flanks, v'shtei yadayim, the two arms, echaze, the chest, v'agera, the neck. All right. So from the bottom up. Sounds good to me. Probably because you're like hanging it from its legs, from its hind legs, probably. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva derech nitucho hayakarev. They would put it on the mizbeach, on the ramp, in the order that you cut it up. Ketzad, how do you cut up an animal? Derech nitucho, how do you cut it up? Arosh v'aregel, so, first the head, and then the leg, and then the back right leg. V'shtei yadayim, the two front arms. Hechaze, the chest, v'agere, and the neck, v'shtei defanos, and the two flanks, v'aoketz, and the tail. That's how you cut it up. V'aregel, and the back left leg. Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer says, Rabbi Yossi Haglili derech iluyo hayakarev. It would be put on the mizbeach by way of how awesome it was, how awesome each part was, how mechubad, how choshev each part was. Ketzad derech iluyo, what is this order of awesomeness? Harosh v'aregel, so first the head and then the back right leg. It's always the head and the back right leg first. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. Hechaze v'agera, then the chest and the neck, v'shtei adfanis, and the two flanks, v'oketz, and the tail, v'aregel, and the back left leg, v'shtei yadayim, the two front arms. Okay. V'aksiv, in fact, the Gemara, doesn't the pasuk say, kol netach tov, yarich v'kasev, every good part, and then it says the yerech, the thigh, the katef, and the shoulder. So we see that the thigh is better than the shoulder. The thing is that we just listed the regel, which includes the thigh, and then the shtei defanos, which is the shoulder. But here we're saying the shoulder and then the thigh. Wait, what? The erech is the thigh, and the kaziv is the shoulder. So the thigh is better than the shoulder. But here we're saying that. The shtei defanos and then the oketz and the regel. Exactly. It's the two flanks, which includes the shoulder, and then it says the regel. So the v'shtei yadayim. So that's like the thigh. No, the shoulder. Basically, the pasuk says that the thigh is better than the shoulder, but we have like the opposite order. Hahi bekusha. The Gemara says, when is the thigh better than the shoulder? That's if it's like a scrawny animal. Okay. Amurava says, ben Tana Didan, ben Rabbi Yossi, Basar Iluya, de Bisra Azlinon. So whether it's our brisa, like the Tanakam, not our brisa, our Mishnah, the Tanakam and our Mishnah, whose order was different than all of these orders that we've seen here. So we say that actually conceptually, the Tanakam and our Mishnah and Rabbi Yossi Aglili are very similar. Basar Iluya, de Bisra Azlinon. They go based on what's the best part. Mar Azul Basar Ivra de Bisra, Umar Azul Basar Shamna de Bisra. Just one Manda Amr is based on the amount of the most meaty parts, whereas the other one is about the most fatty parts. Alright. My time at Salka Regel Bahade Resha, how come we always have a leg with the head, right? In every case we started with the head and then we had like the back right leg. So Mishum de Reisha Nefishe Be'atzomis Karva Regel Bahade. Because since the head is like very bony, so it's, you don't just want to put a head there, you also want to get a shtickle meat dart in, so therefore you also take the back right leg and you put it with the head. But everyone agrees that the head comes first. Minolan, how do we know the Tanis? We learn in the Brisa. How do we know that the head and the fats come before all the other parts of the animal? Therefore it says, as Rosho ves Pidro v'arach. It says its head and its fats, and you then will put everything on the Mizbeach. So we see that the head and the fats come first. V'idach peder achrina l'mai isa. And then there's another pasuk which says, es hanisachim v'sarosh v'sapader. So how come we need to learn a second time these the head and the fats? So the Chdetanit, as it learns in the Brisa, Ketzad Haya Ose, how would you do it? Nosin es peder abeis ashchita umaleu v'zehu derech kavod shemaila. You would take the fats and you would put it on the neck of the head, and that was like the honor towards God. Meaning, what you would do is you would take the head and you put it on the mizbeach, and then the beis ashchita, the part that you slaughtered, that's all like bloody. So it's not very nice to have like something all bloody there on the mizbeach. It is a dead animal, but I guess we still want it to like not be all bloody. So you take the fats and you like stuff up, you put it on the beis hashchita where the head was severed from the rest of the body, and that's kind of like just to make things a little bit nicer for God. Well, that, my friends, was Daf Chafei of Masechta Yoma. So as I had said initially, there was like a whole bunch of stuff on that daf. So we started off by talking about what was the clothing that the Kohanim wore during the lottery. We had a machlokas between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Rav Nachman says that they would wear regular clothing. Rav Sheshes says that they would wear the big day kahuna to the lottery. We talked about the lishkas hagazis a little bit, which was interesting. We said 50% of it was in the kodesh, the holy part, 50% of it was in the non-holy part of the Beis HaMikdash. There were two entrances to the lishkas hagazis. One was in the holy part, one was in the not holy part. How many lotteries? That was interesting. So we said that there are 4 lotteries every day in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, 4 total, or were there 4 sort of gatherings, but each lottery, as we saw in the Mishnah, there was like a whole bunch of stuff that they would have winners for. So maybe each of the 4 was made up of a whole bunch of sub-lotteries. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Taka wanted to argue that, but in the end, we saw Reb Chia taught, and Reb Chia was kind of like borderline Tana, Amora. So he taught in the Brisa that there were 4 lotteries, and by each lottery, whoever won, if there were other things there, if we needed other winners, then they would just be the people standing next to the person who won. Fine. Who does the Kabbalah Saddam? Is it the person who slaughters the animal, or is it the person who throws the blood on the Mizbeach? Who's the one to receive it? So we said it's the one who receives the blood is the one who throws the blood in the Mizbeach is the one who also receives the blood. We brought the proof from the fact that the Kohen Gadol ben Katan made a special kior that had 12 spouts so that all of the Kohanim would be able to do Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim at the same time. And if the slaughterer would also do the Kabbalas Hadam, well then he would also need to be able to do the Kiddush Yadayim v'Raglayim with the other 12, so he would have needed 13 spouts, so it must be that actually the one who throws the blood in the Mizbeach is also the one to receive it. And then we just had a whole bunch of other opinions regarding the order that we put the parts of the animal on the ramp of the Mizbeach, and we ended up with the very last thing we said was something interesting, which is that when you take the head of the korban of the animal and you put it on the Mizbeach, you don't just want the Beis HaShchita to be there all bloody, so you take the fats of the animal and you kind of cover up the Beis HaShchita so it looks a little bit more presentable for God. Chevre, that was Daf Chafei of Masechta Yoma. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Cheers.